an island pond. It
There
hasn't
we
been
go.
the same
Okay, we
since
are
they took
live.
down the old railroad bridge. I'm
We are
telling
live.
you.
We are live. Okay, thank you, Liz. We are live. It is Tuesday and March is almost over and April is around the corner. It's going to be 62 degrees and we have no snow in this area. I guess it was all around your areas, folks. As you know, we'll be getting started sometime this week in the T-bill, a draft run through. But today, I think Michelle is with us to give us, I don't know exactly the subject, but Michelle will tell us. And so, Michelle, with that, we'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mazza. So indeed, the House passed the transportation bill, H433, off the floor last Friday and Thursday or Friday. It's now ready for your consideration. I see Ledge Counsel Anthea Dexter Cooper is here with us this morning as well. And originally we had hoped to have Anthea do the walkthrough first, and then we'll be moving on to the topics throughout the various sections of the T-bill as the week progresses and into next week. But given the fact that we have Commissioner Snyder and Dan DeLabrie from my Rail and Aviation Bureau here with us this morning, maybe what I could suggest is that we have, and they are here to talk about Section 2 of the T-bill, which has to do with the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail. And if it works for you folks, we could have Anthea walk through that specific section, and then the agency can respond with our feedback, and we can answer any questions while we have the experts here on that Section 2. And then we could proceed back with Anthea's walkthrough as time permits. Would that work for you?
That sounds good. I apologize. I had a rules committee meeting this morning after session, so that's why we delayed it till 11 o'clock. But with that in mind, sure, let's do that. We will take the Lamoille Valley Trail. Is that in Orleans County or Caledonia, or where is that?
It's in Lamoille, Caledonia, and Franklin.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
a little bit. We got a little bit in
Okay.
Caledonia.
Okay. All right. Go right ahead. Anthea, are you with us this morning?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay, so I think probably what makes sense is, since the section that you have your agency and department representatives from is Section 2, and since Section 1 is sort of related because it has to do with the transportation program, how about I quickly do Sections 1 and Section 2?
Sure.
Okay, and then Liz, if you could give me sharing access, that would be great. So while we're waiting for that, thank you, Liz. One of the things that might be a little bit new to two of the members of your committee is Section 1 of the T-bill. And Section 1 adopts the Agency of Transportation's proposed annual transportation program, except as it's amended. So you'll remember you got this binder that was delivered to you by the Agency of Transportation. So everything in this binder and the whole binder itself is basically clipped to the back of the bill that you have, and it follows along throughout the whole process. The Secretary of State's office already has a copy, and it gets filed with the bill. So when you see that things are changed, and there's not a ton of that this year, just given the nature of the financial situation that's being dealt with, you'll see that there are amendments to this binder that are included, and we'll go through that when I do my walkthrough. But I wanted to mention that because Section 2 would be requiring something new to be included in the binder going forward. So that's what Section 1A does, is it adopts that binder except as it's amended throughout the rest of the bill itself. Section 1B has a number of different definitions. Most of them are pretty standard or standard at this point. Agency means the Agency of Transportation. For the last few years, a definition for electric vehicle supply equipment, which is the fancy way to say a charging station for electric vehicles, is included. This year, there's also a definition for a multi-unit dwelling, which is a housing project such as cooperatives, condominiums, dwellings, or mobile home parks with 10 or more units constructed or maintained on a tract or tracts of land. And that is a definition that's being used for one of the grant programs. Plug-in electric vehicle plug-in hybrid electric vehicle and battery electric vehicle have been pretty standard for the last few years, also related to the different grant programs. And then secretary, TIB funds, and the table headings are always standard and included in here. And then subsection C, there was just a typo. I'll show it to you tomorrow when I have actual tabs from the binder up, but it's just correcting a numerical error in the binder itself. So section 2.
Anthea, could I have I think for the last couple of years in the Senate, we've put forward sort of out of the plan, those particular investments that tie very much into the state's carbon reduction initiative. Is that in this bill, or is that something we have to define and list and inventory?
It is not included in this version of the bill, but you certainly can, as you have for the past 2 years, take the template that's been used and we can update the numbers.
Okay, all right, thank you.
But you're right, it would normally be appearing after section 1 and before the rest.
That was my recollection. So I was assuming that it was not something that was included here, but okay, that's sort of, I would want to put that on our to-do list because I do think people don't really connect maybe some of the ways in which we're making investments with that goal.
Yep, I can certainly start working on that and work on it with the agency.
All right, that would be great. Well, I'm only speaking for myself. I think, committee,
Fine,
it's
no,
something.
Do it. No, that's great. No, good idea. Let's do it. Yeah. Keep tradition.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
So section 2 would be adding to codified law in 19 VSA section 10G, which provides a lot of the contents for what needs to be included in the annual transportation program. So in this binder, which lists all of the projects and everything that the agency is proposing to spend money on in the upcoming fiscal year, would require that going forward, and the effective date of this section is 7/1/21, but only applicable starting for fiscal year 23, is the annual maintenance required for the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail, which runs from Swanton to St. Johnsbury, and it would need to be included in the binder. And the proposed authorization for maintenance of the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail needs to be sufficient to cover. And then it lists out 7 items on page 4, starting at line 1 and going to line 17. Items 1 through 6 are sort of bigger maintenance requirements. This language is almost all verbatim pulled from the draft MOU that was filed with the General Assembly. And I can certainly get Liz a copy of that to post. I think the agency and the department can speak to that as well. But it would require the annual proposal in the proposed transportation program to include the money necessary for the maintenance and repair or replacement of any bridges along the LVRT, maintenance and repair of the fencing along the LVRT and any lease lines, maintenance and repair of the stormwater systems for the LVRT, any large-scale surface maintenance required due to dangerous conditions along the LVRT or compromise of the rail bed of the LVRT or both, resolution of any unauthorized encroachments related to the rail bed, but not the recreational use of the LVRT, and any other maintenance obligations required of the Agency of Transportation under a memorandum of understanding entered into regarding the maintenance of the LVRT. And one thing to point out here is at present, this is just based off of what was included in that draft MOU, but it remains to be seen what a final MOU would say, and maybe this language would need to be modified accordingly.
I must, Mr. Chair, I must admit, I'm sort of having a visceral reaction to this. It is basically putting forward sort of a future obligation of funding on an ongoing basis. And it's like we could make this kind of statement for any segment of our infrastructure. And I'm just thinking about the precedent of separating out, and maybe it's to give assurances, but I need to better understand whether this is gratuitous language or and the extent, because I've been seeing a lot of language that the agency shall include in its future budgets, this or that. And I'm not talking about necessarily transportation. And I strike it. I'm like saying, I'm not agreeing now with that future obligation of spending that is occurring parallel to our annual budget process. So I'm thinking about what is being laid out here in terms of expectations around what the plan and ultimately the funding requirements are, that basically would say out of all the funding into the plan, the LVRT is first on our list above XYZ. I mean, inherent in this is you're setting priorities. So please disabuse me. And so I will go back to my rather placid self.
All right, good questions.
So I think a lot of those questions might be best
Jill?
answered by members of House Transportation.
I didn't expect a legal response to my visceral response. So
Can I provide
It
one?
is something we'll take up for discussion, I'm sure.
Can I provide one tiny legal response to your visceral response? And that's that just because it's included in the transportation program doesn't mean you actually have to fund it. But
I
understand
know,
where-
I know, and we do it all the time, and it creates expectations, and people will say, oh, I've got that language in, it's sustainable, or it's this or that, and I'm seeing it all over the place, and it falls into the graveyard of broken promises, and so, or it preempts the whole annual plan development or budget decision. So that's, I realize we can put anything in, and then we notwithstand it. I understand that. I just see that happens so frequently. And there's such a desire to do it and say, oh, I've got that all wrapped up. That's taken care of out of the future. And I'm like saying, no, it's really not. It's every year we'll be revisiting it. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, 2 cents is better than none. That's good. Thank you.
And I
Go ahead, Senator Perchlik, go ahead.
just gonna ask Anthea, do we have that language anywhere else in the T-bill for any of our other infrastructure? Or is this would be unique, as Kitchell's pointing out?
I do not believe you have it for any other discrete infrastructure projects like this. I would say a comparable piece is you have your minimum appropriations for town highway aid and for structures and roadway 2, some of that support for municipalities. That is also frequently not withstood. But I am not aware of anything else like that that's sort of linked to a particular project. I think the members that you have from the Agency of Transportation probably would know an exact answer to that. But I
Joe, do you
think
have any
this is
comment at
unique.
this time?
I would say the agency concurs with Senator Kitchell.
Okay.
We don't,
Yeah,
we're
we-
not aware of
I
any.
have not had a conversation with anybody.
No,
Honest
no,
to
no, no,
God.
no, no, I'm just bringing it up now it is one of our items for discussion. That's fine. And I just wanted Michelle we're gonna put a check mark and have a discussion on
Yeah,
this.
the level of specificity in the language
Oh,
here just
I looked at
seems,
that too, and it popped up and grabbed me, and I was wondering about that. We're gonna have areas that the agency will comment naturally for or against, but it will work our way through. But that was a good point to raise. Thank you. Okay, Anthea.
So the last thing I have is just item 7 in that listing of maintenance requirements would be the cost of all ongoing maintenance of the LVRT by the Department of Forests, Parks and Recreation at such time as the agency enters into a lease and maintenance agreement with the department for LVRT. And again, that hasn't been entered into yet. And if you do include something like this, it might be language that would need to be revisited in the future to make sure that what you're asking of the agency and the annual transportation program links up with what the agreement and understanding of how the LVRT will be maintained by the Department of Forests, Parks and Recreation, if at all. So that's it on the section. And I will take down the share.
so that's really interesting. We're going to make Michael Snyder responsible for maintenance of bridges and fences and ditching and, oh, wow.
Think
So
what
it
we
could
might
be
do-
basically everything that wasn't included in those first 6 items.
I think what we should do is have the chair of the Transportation Committee in the House come in and go through the bill with us and give us an overview of their perspective of what they did and didn't do. I think that would be helpful. We've done that in the past, and probably that's what we should do, just to give some thoughts of why the positions they've taken on their issues that they've changed. Okay, all right. Anything else, Anthea?
Did, I have a question.
Sure.
Did this language, was that something proposed by the institutions committee because they were getting into this whole area last fall because we were using capital money as the state match?
That's probably-
This language was proposed by Representative Shaw, the former vice chair of House Corrections and Institutions, the current vice chair of Transportation.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. All right, any other questions? Thank you, Anthea. Michelle, anything you want to add at this time?
Thank you, Senator Mazza. I would indicate that we did submit a report to you earlier this session as required in the capital bill last year. And within the construct of that report, we did follow up with a draft MOU that would outline some of the basic constructs that would be involved were there to be ever an agreement between Forest Parks and Recreation and AOT regarding the long-term maintenance of the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail. There are parties out there who believe that, perhaps this should be a linear state park, or that there should be some other sort of management structure. Currently, as you are all aware, we have a long-term lease with the Vermont Association of Snow Travelers for the sort of what I'll call day-to-day maintenance activities involved in maintaining the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail. We have not had discussions with them about dissolving that lease at this time. Certainly, we're moving to a new phase for this project with the completion next summer of the full 93 miles of the trail being open to the public. And, it will be important that the facility with this major public investment be maintained. And the agency is committed to working with VAST to maintain it. We have the responsibility for the major structural maintenance activities that need to occur. And that is very similar to, what we currently do, like with the Delaware and Hudson Rail Trail, where we have an agreement in that case with Forest and Parks, where they do the day-to-day maintenance. And then we do the major projects, like a major resurfacing of the trail and any huge washouts and that sort of thing. So, at this point, we are contemplating other, sort of arrangements. VAST did prepare a long-term management plan for the trail. So they do have an understanding of what those long-term responsibilities are. I think there will be a heightened level of interest in the trail as it gets completed in terms of marketing. I know the regional planning commissions are working with towns along the trail to think about how they'll do promotion and economic development activities. So I think you'll see a lot of folks once the trail is completed wanting to get involved in the excitement of the trail. And so the administration continues to monitor those discussions and to think about, how we might want to poise the future of the trail in the best possible light to secure and promote the investment. So with those remarks, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Snyder to add any thoughts he might have.
Commissioner Snyder, good morning. Are you on?
Good morning. Yes, I assume you can see and hear me okay?
Someone just said you had $10 million to give us extra for a project. So I didn't know if that was true or false. But,
Well, I must have missed that one, Senator Mazza. Sorry. No,
No,
I
if
think,
that's true, I want my 5 million back that we just gave you in 315.
Ooh.
here it comes.
This is
We're
a tough
just going to
crew you
move
got.
that out to communities throughout the state, Senator Kitchell. So I think you'll be pleased with the fate of that money. I'm sorry I missed the book review session this morning. I thought I'd share this one with you. I
Oh,
don't know if
look at
you do
that.
that, but
You got a book too?
yeah, I sure do. There it
Wow.
is.
Any chance of getting one of those copies? Gosh, that'd be nice.
I'll get you one, Senator,
All
for
right,
sure.
thank you. I would love to read it. Yeah.
Thank you. I couldn't resist. I appreciate your indulgence there. Thanks
God.
for the opener, Senator Ingalls. No, I think, I appreciate Senator Kitchell's, I'd like to start with mentioning appreciation for Senator Kitchell's visceral reaction there. We would agree, and it was, I just want to make clear, this was a surprise to me. Did not ask for it, didn't expect it. And, that said, I would also like to acknowledge an appreciation that people understand that there are ongoing costs. And if we were to take that over, that responsibility, which we've offered, if it's appropriate, we would be happy to bring our expertise to bear on it. And to do so, we would need to identify a source of funding. So that's great that people are aware of that, but I would agree to getting a little ahead of ourselves, especially when we don't have an agreement. And it's in good hands now with VTrans and their partnership with VAST. And but again, putting it on notice that we got to find a way to do it, that would be a big step for us. But otherwise, I think Michelle has outlined it perfectly well. All the interest ongoing. And again, as I indicated to you earlier this year, and sort of in some background, we support the power and the benefits of the trail to local communities throughout the state. Want to play a helpful role if we can, and if that means in time taking it on in some way using our parks management expertise, et cetera, we're happy to do so. But for now, we're just kind of waiting in the wings, trying to be helpful as we can, encouraging the benefits of the trail. And I'll just stay tuned. But I don't know that I really have much to offer beyond what my colleagues at VTrans have offered here. And we're appreciative for mostly just the excitement to get the darn thing finished, and really happy about that.
Good. Questions from Mike at this time?
Uh,
Yes, I can't see you. Go right ahead, Senator Perchlik.
And I don't know if it's just a question for the commissioner, but maybe it's for Anthony or AOT. And that is, do we need that language, that number 7 in section 2? Wouldn't that just be dealt with by a potential MOU? There's Senator Kitchell's questions about whether we need any of that, but specifically that number 7, do we need that? Like, what if you just sign an MOU with AOT, wouldn't that handle it? Do you need statutory language that says if you sign an MOU, then you will do it?
So
Yes.
that
Yeah.
the additional piece that's there is you're not authorizing the entrance into that maintenance and lease agreement or that MOU. You're saying that for purposes of the annual transportation program, that big binder, if Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation is going to need to be spending, I'm going to pick a number simply out of a hat, $50,000 on their maintenance obligations, that would need to go into the annual proposed transportation program. And then the expectation there is that it's probably going to be paid for out of the transportation program through the sources that are, available, the T funds, the federal amount if it's available, if general fund dollars are used. So it's saying potentially you, Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation, have these maintenance obligations, but us, Agency of Transportation, are going to foot the bill through the transportation program, provided that it's adopted and not changed by the General Assembly, and then the sufficient money is appropriated in the big bill. So you are teeing up the payment for it, even though the actual obligations of the maintenance side would be handled in that other agreement.
I thought the commissioner was accepting that if he had some funds to go along with it, he'd be glad to get involved. I thought that what you said, Mike?
Yes, that's been our take. I think others need to be involved in that decision, but we've said, if it's appropriate and deemed so, then we're happy to take it on, subject to having sufficient, ability to take care of it. That's always been the case.
I have a question, Michael. The trail, it's because it's a rail bed and because of the way it's been engineered, certainly very different than many other trails that you may maintain. And we found that, in fact, in doing the work, it was way beyond the capacity of VAST because of the engineering, because of all the technical information that you needed, et cetera. And I'm just thinking about the experience that we've had so far, and that is, at some point, does transportation, just by the nature, the design, the standards of this trail, make it somewhat unique relative to other trails in terms of what it will take to continue engineering, maintenance, scoping, and all of those activities. And I just, the more, I think we've got to be, I guess, I'm wondering to what extent this is being driven by somebody had an idea we should make it a linear park, and therefore let's get Forest and Parks involved. And I just think that that's getting ahead of things for a trail that isn't even completed. And I also think that we have to say, are there unique qualities about the trail and the standards that we're using so that the people in motorized wheelchairs and scooters can use that trail. I expect they can't use the long trail. I expect they can't use a lot of the trails that you're maintaining. And so just to overlay or say, oh, that's where, because you do trails, this is a trail, you get it. I just think we need to be cautious about understanding what the demands are for the Lamoille Valley Trail, just because of the length, the complexity, and the engineering experience that we've had over the years, where it was way, way beyond what VAST had. So those are just some of the thoughts that are rolling around my head at this point.
I'm happy to, and they make good sense to me, and I think they're consistent with what we've been saying. It's indeed what we included in the report back to you all pursuant to the capital adjustment.
Did they read that?
Sorry? You have that, and
no, I was being maybe a little bit cynical. How many people actually read the report? Our experiences.
It's very short. One of its better attributes is it's quite short, I would say.
Yeah.
No, I'll make a couple quick comments in response. Beyond basically agreeing with you, I would just simply say that it's not a unique model. It is done, we do it, as Michelle indicated. We have the relationship with VTrans with the D&H Rail Trail in southwestern Vermont. We take a portion, they do the major stuff, and it works well. Because of there's also the recreational use, and that's our strength. You're right that there are engineering issues that are the strength of our friends at VTrans. So that partnership makes some sense. So we do that here, and it's a model that's used in other states with rail trails. And I think to the point of the need for VTrans involvement, remember, it's federally rail banked. We would not take it over. We would have a relationship to manage it. They'd own it. They'd still be a major partner in driving it, and the MOU would stipulate those kinds of things. So, and I think it's so, it's not unique here. It's not some sort of strange idea. It's been used and well deployed elsewhere. And even here, we have, as I said, a relationship. And I think that would be important because of the nature of the ownership, the unique nature of the asset itself, like you mentioned, bridges and certain engineering features. And we wouldn't want to go ahead.
Well, and the other thing that makes it unique is the lease with VAST, which doesn't exist.
That exists currently, and this whole idea.
No, but the Delaware and Hudson, that doesn't involve VAST, right?
That's
so
right.
I'm just saying that makes the Lamoille Valleys somewhat unique in that there is this lease that's been in place, and a lot of work has been done by VAST that is unique to the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail compared to the Delaware Hudson, I assume, or are they involved? They don't have a lease, right?
That's right. No involvement there. And I think that's what we've said is it's working well now with the relationship that exists with VTrans and VAST. And this was just more looking to the future. And there were questions, particularly in the House last year, about, well, is VAST up to this? There are winter recreation. This would be year round. And so they were asking those questions. And that's, again, it was really over the fight about the appropriateness of capital funds, where I said, well, geez, you support our recreational trail assets through capital funds all the time. Why not just think of it that way? That's I think where this all got started. But there are legitimate, other needs, demands, uses, and for management needs that I think we do have strengths and expertise in that come to bear for something like this. They're not the only ones. And that's, so again, I'm with you. We just want to be helpful. We see it as a possibility down the road. I know the governor has said to me that he wants all the options for considering the operations of this in the future to be on the table. And right now we're really focused on getting it completed. And that gives us a little time to think about an operating model for the future that can contemplate the legitimate expenses of ongoing maintenance. And that was really the concern. And if we can play a role there, we'd be happy to. As I said last time, it is tricky in that elsewhere, in terms of operating as a state park, we generally, those are fee controlled areas and we charge, access fees, and we really don't suggest or recommend that in this case. So that does raise the question of, well, how would we cover the burden of maintenance and management if it were to be operated as a state park? Because we're really not recommending that.
Mhm.
We are in violent agreement, Senator Kitchell, once again.
Senator Mazza?
Yes, Senator Pertler.
Well, one way to pay for it is Chittenden's toll by plate for the people that are using the trail. So you can talk to him about his tolls on
Yeah,
the
he
trail.
likes tolls.
Yeah, tolls all the time.
Do we
Um,
have, do dogs and horses have to pay tolls too?
They have a license plate.
Chittenden's working on that. He's working on it.
Anything four legs.
Anything with a license plate, we'll toll.
But no, I just want to clarify my question to Anthea, but again, maybe Mike or Michelle can weigh in. If we didn't have that section 7, they could still have an MOU, and the MOU could say we're going to pay for it. That just seems
Yeah.
like, and maybe that's the case for all that language. It's not needed. It's just somebody trying to.
It's what I would call gratuitous.
Yeah, I think looking forward, and I that's my expectation too, Senator Perchlik, and I wouldn't sign the MOU if we didn't have a reasonable plan for coverage. That would be irresponsible. We'd need to figure that out, and we would do that.
I was waiting you to come back, talk to you about him. Really?
I just want to make sure you
No,
didn't do
I
something.
didn't know who to call.
I guess what I think there's such a desire to be so prescriptive and language and some of this, it seems like as a matter of course, it's prescriptive not only in terms of the administration side, but it's almost prescriptive as well as we're thinking about decisions the legislature makes relative to spending and whatever. So it just, I think that's a good question, Andy. In other words, would this just not evolve on its own without this level of detail and instruction that we're seeing here? But my bigger concern is anything that somehow creates an obligation out into the into the future and what shall be included or not included as it relates to our transportation infrastructure, because that's always a balancing of competing priorities.
Okay.
I think I'm ready to call it a week.
Yeah, I know. We just started, right? I understand. Anything else this
That's some
morning?
light reading here for you too, Senator Kitchell. That'll take care of it.
I gotta say, I like that. That's great.
I'm reading a rather dark book. It's called Milltown, and it's about Jay Main and well, you'll be familiar with it. Maybe you should read it,
Quite.
As it relates to the paper company and the degree of pollution and the impact on workers and a kind of the economic reality of where you have that single, economic base around one industry. It's Tim Ash gave it to me. He's into really dark and depressing things. I got to stop reading that. So I'll read your book if it's uplifting and,
Sure.
more Mary Poppins. What are you looking at, Senator Chittenden?
This is Senator Ingles' book. I've read 2 chapters so far. I don't know if it's uplifting, but maybe Senator Ingles can give us a sneak peek.
Oh, okay. I'm ready.
It will
covered-
save the world.
I covered 135 pages last night. I was so excited about it. So I kept looking for Ingalls' picture that he did something, but I couldn't find it. No, yeah, Senator Chittenden.
I have some new guy questions about how we're tackling the T-bill. Is this, I don't know if I want to do them on camera or not. I guess But are we going to tackle each section as part of this?
Every section,
35
we'll go through
bill?
every section, when we'll find out the agency's viewpoint and we'll find out the House viewpoint, how they differ.
Okay.
So whether the agency agrees, disagrees, you'll have both sides. But every section will start from section 1 and you'll have chance to go through every section from the perspective of the agency and our feelings, and to relate to the House's what changes they made. So
And we can add too.
we can add to anything we
As
want.
germane.
If they say they want $1 million for this, we can say 2 million or whatever. I mean, that's the way it works. So it's a wide open discussion and we'll have plenty of to get all through it. And I don't think they've made a lot of changes this year, but having said that, there's always some we agree and some we disagree. So that's the purpose of it. So you'll have enough time to, the bill will not leave this committee unless everyone is in favor or has their input and can agree on the bill. So we'll take our time and not rush through it because there's a lot of moving parts. They deal with so much, from the airports to the highways, the bridges and everything else. So. And yes, Senator Chittenden, go ahead.
And so with the language that is concerning to Senator Kitchell, is it more appropriate to work those out with the House now while it's still in our committee, or is that done after we pass something and then we
After.
reconcile? Okay.
After. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
No, we don't negotiate anything now. It's over. They've done their thing. They've got a vote from the House that's unanimous, I'm sure. And so Liz, you can take us